Here's something that most entrepreneurs keep forgetting. You can't do it all by yourself. Many times, collaborating with others can help you achieve a new level of growth, and that's exactly what Brad Hart realized early on. Brad Hart is an entrepreneur and mastermind expert with over 20 years of experience. He's built and managed successful companies across real estate, trading, and marketing, achieved a remarkable 106% return in a single year with his hedge fund, Hartward Capital. Having participated in over 50 masterminds, launched more than 24 himself, including a local group of 450 members, Brad is passionate about the power of collaboration. As a founding member of the Knowledge Business Blueprint team alongside Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, he's helped thousands launch their own masterminds.
Especially when, the inevitable human stuff comes up, like anxiety and depression and, being a real person that has feelings. Because I think we all struggle with, stuff about being human, mental health challenges, etc. And if you don't have a great way to deal with that, it's just going to suck energy from your life. I think that's the biggest thing for me, at least the last few years, is just that emotional energy management.
Today, he's here with us to share his insights on the power of masterminds to grow your business, connect with like-minded individuals, as well as how you can leverage AI to build a thriving community. Welcome to The Creator's Adventure, where we interview creators from around the world, hearing their stories about growing a business. Hey everyone, I'm Brian McAnulty, the founder of Heights Platform. Let's get into it. Hey, Brad, welcome back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's been about a couple of years since we last talked, so it'll be nice to catch up and talk some more about what you're doing. One of the first things I want to ask you, though, is a question I started asking on the show that I don't think I was asking when I first talked with you. And that is, what is the biggest thing that either you did or you are doing that has helped you to achieve the freedom to do what you enjoy?
It's a great question, Brian. It's certainly not one thing, but I would say some of the bigger ones are consistently working on myself, consistently working on the way I show up and, energy management, and just consistently asking myself the question, like, what's been hard, draining, beat my head against the wall versus what's been like filling my batteries and I'm excited about, especially when, the inevitable human stuff comes up, like anxiety and depression and, being a real person that has feelings. Like, how do you shift from that into a place of gratitude, grace, and acceptance, and putting one foot in front of the other and back at it? Because I think we all struggle with, stuff about being human, mental health challenges, etc. And if you don't have a great way to deal with that, it's just going to suck energy from your life and keep you. It's like trying to run with lead weights on through the pool. It's just not, it's not fun. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, at least the last few years, is just that emotional energy management. Tony Robbins, Landmark, NLP have all been really helpful with that.
Awesome. So you've helped many people launch their own masterminds. How has your approach evolved or changed, if at all, since our last conversation?
Yeah, great question.
Anything new you're working on today you want to share?
I would love to share a story that kind of grounds some of this. And you mentioned before we started recording, actually, you're like, oh, what happened with Tim Ferriss? And everybody wants to know that story. So can I tell that story real quick?
Yeah. I want to hear it.
So basically, long story short, I left my hedge funds. I was kind of spiraling. My dad had just passed away. And I had this opportunity because I met Tim at a gym, of all places, just two Long Island bros shooting the shit over some weights, to go to Africa with him because he had done this big launch. And it was like, his second book, and he was going really big. He's like, hey, if you buy 1,000 books and help me get on the bestseller list, I'll take you on a trip to wherever. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. It sounds like a cool opportunity to spend 10 days with one of my heroes, right? I'd read his book 7 times. I'd met him. And I reached out to Charlie, who was working for him at the time. And I'm like, hey, man, what's the deal with these trips? He's like, oh, well, crazy part is we've gotten a lot of requests, but they're all people that Tim would never be caught dead in a foreign country with for 10 days. He met you, and you were cool, and you guys chatted, and you didn't think you were like a psycho. We're both from Long Island. We had some things in common. And he's like, yeah, if you want to do it, go for it. So I bought the books. I donated 900 of them. I got 100 of them delivered as Christmas presents that year, which was still enough to block the entire garage of my house, make my UPS guy curse my name. But we ended up going to Africa, which is the place I selected. I think the options were like India, Africa, or Argentina. I'm like, when am I going to go to Africa? So we get on a plane. We go to Lamu Island. This is July of 2011. And a bunch of crazy stuff happened on that trip, which I won't get into for time's sake. But I got malaria on that trip. We got to help lift people out of poverty on that trip. I almost got trampled by donkeys on that trip. I got to see elephants and giraffes on that trip. It was a really cool trip. I got to play golf with like the president and the general of Kenya right behind us, yelling at us in Swahili because we suck at golf. Like just wild, wild stuff. But the one thing that really sticks with me and is relevant to the story is we're at this hotel on Lamu Island. We're on the shore, we're looking at the water, and Tim sits me down and asks me, what do you want to do with your life? And I told him about, you know, kind of where I was at, and he could tell I was stuck. And he's like, hey, do you want to go to North Korea? I said, North Korea? Why the hell would I want to go to North Korea, Tim? He says, oh, my friend's running a mastermind group there. I think you should go. I think it'd be really good for you. I'm like, oh. I'm like 25 at the time, whatever. I'm like, well, who's your friend? He says, well, I can't tell you. He's a very private person. He's a very famous person. I'm like, okay. Are you going to North Korea? No. I'm like, why do I want to go to North Korea? So like, I refused the call. I'm like, I'm not going to North Korea, Tim. Sorry. But I get back to New York. I recover from my malaria. It's like 2-3 weeks later, and I'm sitting in a cafe near Mercer Street where I worked at the time. And I get this email from Neil Strauss, and it's a photo of him with a bunch of dudes in North Korea doing a mastermind group, launching a mastermind group. I'm like, what are the odds, right? So I reach out and like, you know, I had met Neil years prior because I follow his books and stuff. And I'm like, hey, tell me about this mastermind group. I talked to his guy, and I ended up joining, and it ended up being one of the most incredible experiences of my life. So that's how I was kind of brought into that world of like, oh, I'm surrounded by people now who want to better their lives, who want to help each other to succeed, who, you know, want to grow. So I grew, I lost weight, I got in shape. I had my first $1 million business that I ended up exiting from. It was a hedge fund. It was like all this crazy stuff that started happening for me, and masterminds were the reason, right? So, you know, fast forward, I finally start going to Tony Robbins and getting my life together, and I start an actual mastermind. So that was like the next thing, right? And you know, that's where it really started to come alive for me, as I started to see other people transform. I started to realize like, oh, this is a pretty cool business model, because I had been consulting and coaching and doing the one-on-one thing. But if you've ever been in one-on-one consulting or coaching, or you're an expert or whatever it is, it's like the grind. It's the income roller coaster. You got to get on the roller coaster. You got to market and sell and deliver. And then all of a sudden you're back to square one. It's like not sustainable. So if we want to think about the target of a mastermind, I realized over many years of doing this, and the way I kind of approach it now is there's leading indicators and there's lagging indicators. And your leading indicators are 3 C's, and your lagging indicators are 3 R's. So we'll start with the lagging and we'll go to the leading, right? So the results you want are just that: results for your clients, relationships with your clients and each other, right? So everybody, that's like the force multiplier in a mastermind. It's not just results, but also relationships, and recurring revenue for you. If you can get results with your clients, and they can get results and get what they need, they're not going to leave, right? They're going to get what they need. But if they don't have a relationship or anything keeping them there, they're going to go away, right? They're going to be mercenary. They're going to get what they need and go. They're not going to keep paying you. If you just give them relationships, but they're not getting results, they're going to eventually be like, why am I paying to hang out with my friends? I already know all the people here. So you have to have that dichotomy solved, right? And finally, if you hit both on the head, you get that sweet, sweet recurring revenue where people stay in these masterminds for years and years. So I have friends and clients that have $1 million masterminds. I just interviewed 10 of them for my new book, $1 Million Masterminds, which comes out later this year. And every single one of them has that in common, is they get great results, they have great relationships, and they have a great mastermind and recurring revenue, right? And the leading indicators, which I alluded to earlier, the 3 C's, are clarity, content, and community. If you can help people create clarity, that's the first step. That could be a hot seat, that could be coaching, that could be a lot of things. But clarity is the first step. We need to know where we're at in order to know where we're going to go. And most people, you just give them clarity, they know exactly where, like if they're switched on and self-managed and started, they're going to just go and do it, right? They're going to figure it out. Or they just, maybe they need a connection or a resource or just a quick game plan strategy session, and they're off to the races. And then community keeps you accountable, right? Because you want to not be the dumbest person in the room forever, right? You want to continue to level up. And then finally, that content is like, okay, we've solved these types of problems enough times where you can create really comprehensive content so you can get these results on your own. And that's kind of the piece that everybody leads with. And they're like, oh, content. But really, it's about the clarity and the community that drives the content, not the other way around. So
yeah,
the 3 C's lead to the 3 R's. And that's a long ass answer to your very simple question. That's how I've changed my approach.
I think that's great. I think that'll be really helpful for our audience. Like if you're watching or listening to this now and you didn't see my first episode with Brad, I would say go back and watch that. We get all into a bunch of other things about masterminds. But Brad, I think a lot of people paying attention to this episode and in my audience, they're familiar with like courses and communities, but not so much masterminds.
Mm-hmm.
So they may be thinking right now, like I could imagine, okay, content got it, community got it. The clarity part, I feel like where they might struggle because they're used to like, okay, here, I made a course. Yeah, there's this defined result I'm going to provide. But now with the mastermind, like, okay, I gave it, I made the content. Now what happens like year two, for example?
Yeah. Great question. And this was the big unlock for me. And by the way, I love courses. I create courses. My wife is an incredible course creator. Her name's Jasmine Jonte. Look her up. She's got an insane, like, done for you course agency that's awesome. JasmineJonte.com. Small plug for my wife. So I'm hip. And courses are a commodity. Real transformation, quick transformation, specific, like custom transformation happens in a community with peers or facilitated leadership or some sort of curation. And that clarity piece is so important. Like if I just tell you, go watch this video, you're going to get a bunch of stuff that you're not really looking for. But if I first take 15 minutes to like drill into what is really going on and then recommend, oh, go watch this specific module or go watch this specific training to get your next result, that's a whole different ballgame. And that's what a mastermind allows you to do. That's how you get results with your people once you have the content. And God help you, if you're just creating content willy-nilly because you think that's what people need, you're going to have a hard time because you're probably going to miss the mark more than you hit it.
Yeah.
So that clarity piece, so important.
Yeah, I agree completely. So in our last episode, we didn't really talk about AI. That was just before AI became such a huge thing that it is today. What are your thoughts on AI and the role of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I love AI. I mean, I'm diving down the rabbit hole, honestly. I was kind of super early on a lot of things. I was in the crypto space early, 2009. I started looking at Bitcoin, started buying them, Ethereum in 2015. So like that's one example, but I was early on blogs, I was early on websites, e-commerce, agencies, like all this stuff that I've done over the years. I was pretty early on, behind the big curve. AI I actually held off on because I knew the way my brain works and I knew what I was focused on at that time. And I knew if I got into that rabbit hole, I would have a really hard time getting out of that rabbit hole. And if I'm being fair, the first few interactions I had with it, Brian, I wasn't impressed. I wasn't like, oh my God, this is amazing, going to change the world yet. It just wasn't there yet. And we have to make the distinction, like AI in entrepreneurship is ChatGPT. That's what everybody talks about. But there's AI that can learn the game Go and beat the best players in the world, like machine learning. And you give it a rule set and it'll just go iterate and do a billion games and figure out how to win. And then there's AI that like powers drones. Like AI is a big thing. So specifically, I'm going to talk about LLMs because I think that's what most people are familiar with. It just wasn't there yet. And now it is there. Now these LLMs, I'm having conversations with them every day and it's actually providing a crazy benefit in my life because I have a non-emotional, not judgmental entity to discuss my craziest obsessions with. Like I want to go find Atlantis. I can plan that out to the dollar. I can go find the spot on the map. I can figure out the transportation and the costs and what it would take and who would I need to have and what kind of LiDAR should I use. Like I can have wild conversations with this thing. And that's like the research side, the feasibility side. I can talk to it and code things. I can say, hey, I want to do this in Make, and I want to make this with FormWise, and I want it to plug into GHL or whatever tools you're using, insert Kajabi, insert whatever. How do I do that? And it'll give you step by step by step. And then when you find it hallucinating or you get stuck, you can just literally screenshot what you're working on, send it to it, be like, hey, this is where I'm stuck. What do you think? And then it'll give you the next step. So like you can kind of, without a lot of technical expertise, start to really iterate quickly. And then finally, I think the third thing is it just supercharges all the marketing stuff. So like when you used to think about a partner launch or launching your course or launching your mastermind or any of that stuff, you knew you had to build some emails, you had to build some partner content, you had to build a website, you had to build this, you had to build that. And like you're looking at legitimately dozens of hours for each phase to get all that done. And if your team's not that big, a lot of it falls on you, and it's challenging. At the very least, you got to review it all. And if you have AI that can get you 80, 90% of the way there on a lot of the stuff, then you could just go through it, review it, tweak it, make it better, update the prompt, etc. You can rapidly draft stuff and be ready to go in a fraction of the time. So that's a cool use case. I'll just share 3 for now because I've got 300, but I think as time goes on, it'll continue to become great. And I think for course creators specifically, you can train AI on your content to get a very specific result. So you can start to build tools for your clients that are like, hey, it does this thing. I've trained it to do this thing based on my proven content. It's not winging it. It's playing in the sandbox I created, and it can get you this result in record time. So we do that with like our offer contents and things like that. In fact, I have one that you could check out. It's just buildamastermind.com/offer AI, I think. Let me just double check that. Offer AI. And that would be an example of one of those. So this is trained. Yep. Nope, that's not right. Okay. Offer Builder AI. That's what it is. Okay. So you go to buildamastermind.com/offer builder AI. And I don't know if you can see my screen or not, but just walk with me here. So you jump onto the page, get my AI Easter egg that helps you construct a scalable offer in 120 seconds. So, okay, I want to build a mastermind and I want to do it quickly and I don't want to get stuck. So like I used to bring people into my program, and the first waypoint was, hey, build your offer. Here's your 5 prompts. Go do it. Spend an hour, block out the world and do it. And I chased people for 3 weeks to get this done. Now they can throw any half-assed idea of a mastermind into this thing and get it back in a minute or two. And it's like 80% of the way there. And they can begin to do market research and iterate and get people on the phone. So like it just speeds everything up and it gives people quick wins. So if you're creating content, again, don't create content before you have clarity on what people are really needing and wanting. But if you're creating content and then stopping there and not using ChatGPT and AI to like supercharge it, I think you're also leaving a huge amount of money on the table. So check mine out. You'll get into my group. We have a cool school group. The link to that is just marbles.link/scaling secrets. And I can teach you about more some of the stuff. And that's really designed for coaches, creators, courses, people like that who want to build, yes, masterminds, but also tools to build AI. Because yeah, I'm the mastermind guy. I've been doing that a dozen years, and it's great, and I love it. It's my favorite model. But if you are behind the time on everything else, you gotta upgrade your skills.
Yeah. Well, I think you identified it right there about saying how like you go chase after the people to try to get that done, and now they can go and just give that to the AI.
Yeah.
And so
simple.
if somebody's listening to this and wondering like, man, I hear these people talking about getting all this value and leverage from AI, and like that's not happening for me, then I think it's really doing what you just did and figuring out, okay, where is like something you have to do in your company or organization, like a customer always has this kind of question or this kind of thing that you have to help them through. And you can't just make like an article about it because somebody's got to think about it in some way and like decide on some framework. You can take that framework and how you would review it, you give it to AI, and now AI can do that part for you.
Well, yeah, and I've gone through this in my own way. It's like we've been trained as a society to have to be convinced of things, convinced of a benefit, convinced of a new way of thinking, convinced of what the best way to approach it is, convinced and motivated enough to actually try it and then iterate it and iterate and iterate it. And maybe we get a result. That's so wasteful. What if we just can talk to a machine that already knows how to do the thing and then we just get the result and then we're on to the next thing? And yeah, it's maybe not 100% of what we could have done if we went through that whole arduous process. But if it's 80% and we get all our time back, we get to move on to the next idea. Cool, right? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You have any thoughts about, or have you done anything yet with like AI in terms of like either your mastermind directly and like keeping members engaged or connected? Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so this is not public facing yet. So I mentioned I'm pretty big in the Tony Robbins community. So like we've done big launches with Tony. I was a top affiliate for Tony. My wife has been to like 25 events. She's run big teams at these big events that they have like 15,000 people at. She'll run teams of like 75, 80 people herself, yada, yada, yada. I was a speaker, trainer, all that stuff for them. So like I'm really embedded in that organization. And they just had a great new event where they launched their software called RPM. And RPM has a trained widget in the corner where you can ask Tony anything. And it's trained on all of Tony Robbins content. So it's like a chat bot. And if you want to talk to Tony Robbins about any old thing, there you go. And that's cool. So like we've made a version of that for Brad. But that's the kind of use cases that are really great. So like you're going through this RPM plan or whatever. It's like, help me craft this statement. Help me create this result that's juicy. Help me create a purpose. Help me create like a massive action plan. Like all that stuff is, filtered through the lens of 40 years of Tony stuff. that is proven to work for a lot of people. He's helped a lot of people build huge things, and now you can access that 24/7. So like, if you don't have some version of that at some point, it doesn't have to be today, but like if you're not building towards that, I think you're missing something, because it's not a replacement for you. I don't know that it'll ever be a replacement for you. But if people can get a timely, like 80, 90% of the way their answer that they can then come back and ask clarifying questions on, and it's 24/7 and it doesn't require any of your input because you've already done the work to set it up, that's a game changer.
Yeah, the 24/7, and the fact that it's not only 24/7, but it's also instant. So like even like a live chat or something,
Yeah.
even if you were sitting there on a live chat, like you've got to think about it and type it out. Maybe it's going to be a couple minutes before you get back to them. And AI is literally just, I have this idea, like, here's the question, here's something, give me something back.
Yeah. Well, and try getting Tony Robbins on the phone. That guy's got $1 million a year coaching package, and he's got a 3-year waiting list. Like, you're not getting him as fast as you're going to get his chatbot. Or myself for that matter. It's like, it's getting more difficult to help everybody that asks for help, without charging a really high premium on my time. And my time is my inventory. I can't be just giving it away for free. Right. So, I think as you go along, you have to recognize like, okay, I've got a warehouse of my inventory. I can't let people sneak in and just grab whatever they want and walk out. That would be stealing, right? So if I had a physical product, that would be the scenario. But we're allowing people to do that with our time all the time. And yeah, we're getting leverage with courses and masterminds and whatever we're doing. But if we don't have a system by which we can weed out the value takers and the battery drainers and attract the people who actually value paying us and building a relationship with us so that we can solve problems long term and not just get quick hits, then we're failing, right? And that used to be content. That was the system, and now it can be content with AI. And that's the new middle of funnel, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I'm curious, this is something that we're actually working on. I'm curious your thoughts about it. We're working on it more in terms of like community, but I'm curious in thoughts of like for a mastermind, because masterminds are generally going to be a little bit smaller. Have you considered using AI to match mastermind members together a little bit better?
Yes.
So for example, like with community, like the kind of promise and one of the benefits of it is like you can make these connections with people that you find out like, wow, I met this person through the community and it's really beneficial. But especially with a large community, more and more that ends up being like a chance rather than like a planned thing. And for an individual to say like, all right, I've got like 10,000, even 1,000 people in the community, I'm going to go in and help you guys connect is not really feasible. So
I got a simple solution to that. I just haven't built it yet. You want to know what it is? We could build this prompt right now. I say intake form, Google Sheets, whatever, pumps into a spreadsheet, train the AI to go through and look for keywords and say, based on the information in the spreadsheet, what I'm looking for, what my superpower is, what kind of company I run, suggest 3 possible matches for this person. And then it goes through and says, okay, they should talk to Dave, Sally, and Joe for these reasons. And you keep iterating on that prompt until you get reliably some really solid connections, because you're a super connector. I'm a super connector reluctantly. I know a lot of people, right? I could make a lot of connections, and my brain doesn't always make those connections in real time when needed. And I forget who I know. And that's the problem with being a meat suit, right? It's like you lose data here and there when you reformat the hard drive occasionally. So if you were to create that spreadsheet and just have it being an ongoing thing, continue to make it better data, you continue to train the prompt, anytime, let's say once a quarter, somebody who's a VA or whoever could go in, run that prompt, reference the sheet, 3 introductions, vet them based on, or just send them to you and be like, hey, I think I should introduce Joe and Jane and Bob to Dave and Sally and Joe or whoever, right? And just click approve and you're good to go. That could be a consistent value add for your mastermind. That would be the way I would approach it.
Yeah. So we're going to do something like that. I think the intake questions, like that's the way to go with it. But then instead of just having like specific rules, like in a prompt of saying like, okay, well, if they said this or that, we're actually going to look at like the way AI can like retrieve information is it can understand like the vector similarity, like the actual meaning behind words. So 2 people might say like completely different words in a way that it's not going to like match something, but AI can tell like, all right, these 2 people, they've got some kind of connection based on these things and bring people
Yeah.
together that way.
And I just
And
want to pause because this is a big banner thing that everybody messes up. AI does not replace humans. It helps humans do their job faster and more efficiently. So it's got to be
yeah,
AI with human review, and the human makes the decision to make the introduction. If
yeah,
you throw that piece out, results will go off the rails. They will not go well. And if you end up building that before I get to it, please share your prompt with me. I would love to check it out.
yeah. All right. Any other advice you would give to entrepreneurs looking to like better kind of integrate AI in their business, especially in terms of like involving a mastermind group?
Those are the ones that come to mind for now. You know, when I first started Masterminds, like they weren't as mainstream as they are today. So if we just look at the whole educational world, you have 6 trillion being spent K through university per year, which is a tremendous amount of money. Online education is like 350 million, so about 5-6% of that. And masterminds, courses, like all these events, like these little niches, you know, like I think masterminds are 40 billion or something like that. And then there's, you know, courses are whatever billion. It's like they're chunks of that. So it's like understand you're in a growing market. It's not going to grow in a straight line. It's, you know, sometimes it's going to grow, sometimes it's going to contract. Sometimes there's going to be a big land shift like AI that separates the wheat from the chaff, and the people who adopt it and get really good at it are going to have a competitive advantage. Just understand where you're at and just realize like there's a big, wide ocean out there. And even if you perform the same service or teach the same types of things as somebody else and somebody likes you better or only knows about you versus the other person, that's your client versus their client. So just don't get discouraged about, you know, what we're all experiencing right now. It's like, oh, these clients aren't paying, or oh, this is happening, or oh, that's happening. Like, you know, interest rates, everything is all up in flux. The election, there's just a million reasons that you could ascribe to that, and it doesn't really matter. I'm just saying, if you're in doubt, zoom out. You got to widen up your pipeline. You got to upskill yourself. You got to make sure you're doing things that nobody else is doing, and learn from other people. Like, don't be afraid to jump in school groups and learn from whoever about whatever with regard to AI. Like, I just picked up a book about AI that Facebook recommended me on a feed, you know, like 20 minutes before this call. I was looking through this really cool prompt about how to create a life insurance selling chatbot. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty awesome. And I'm a life insurance agent. It's like, I won't go sell life insurance, but that would be a cool thing to have as a tool. Or I could, you know, refer it back to my people who do sell life insurance and add value to them. So it's like, knowing more things never hurts you helping people. And if you're going to run a mastermind and relationships are one of the vectors, one of the lagging indicators that you are aiming at, you need to get good at understanding the playing field you're playing in and being able to have a checkbox for that particular person. So like Brian might be one of my AI checkbox guys, right? It's like if somebody says, hey, I want to build something specific in AI or I want to learn about AI, I'm going to say, go check out, you know, Brian and the Heights platform and all that great stuff. You know, it's like, you become more valuable, not by knowing everything, but knowing enough to be dangerous and knowing who is the right person to connect with. So that's the mindset piece. I think that shifts. Another quick example, I did an event called Mastermind of Millions 7-8 years ago now. And since then I became partners with the person. We did 4 of them together, and that's a whole other story. But when I went originally, I went to the VIP night, and at the serving line on the buffet was a guy with these blue husky eyes who I just was entranced by. He had this like Jesus hair, and he had a vibe. You ever just meet somebody, you have a vibe, and you know, I wasn't like physically attracted to him, but there was like a tractor beam kind of energy. And I was just like, dude, what's your story? Like, you know, what are you excited about right now? What are you up to? What are you working on? And he went to explain to me that he'd gone with his entire family to Bali for 6 months and built $100,000 a month e-commerce business selling cat tunnels and salt and pepper shakers. I was like, you're making $100,000 a month with a small family business online doing that. And this is like 2017. This is before e-com really hit the mainstream.
Yeah,
I was like, dude, I want to learn all about this. He's like, great. I guess I could coach you. It'll be $30,000. We'll do it one-on-one. I'm like, okay, we could do that. And I'm sure it would be awesome and valuable. But I know how I learn, and I learn better in groups with other smart people asking smart questions and taking notes and comparing notes and all that good stuff. And let me ask you this. You got into this business for freedom, right? He's like, yeah. And like, even if I did give you $30,000 and, you know, I became one of your coaching clients, are you going to start a coaching business? He's like, no. I'm like, are there other people that want to learn this from you? He's like, yeah. I was like, oh, interesting. So do they all have $30,000? No. Even if they did, would you fill your calendar up with coaching calls? No. Oh, okay, great. Well, what do we do? Why don't we do it this way? I have a skill set too. I build mastermind groups. You have people who maybe they won't pay 30 grand, but they'll pay some lesser amount to be in a group with people where you get to teach them once, give them the whole goods, and not have to deal with a ton of phone calls. I'll do the sales. I'll do the marketing. And we'll put them in the group, and we'll go to, you go to China and Hong Kong and do product fairs every year. We'll just take them over there. It'll be great. So he said yes. In 2 weeks, we'd raised 35 grand from 35 people at $1,000, which, was a beta intro price, and they had to deal with their own travel and all that good stuff. And we took them to China and Hong Kong. It was awesome. We spent 2 weeks out there, and just like I thought, they took better notes than I did. They asked better questions than I would have, and ended up building a partnership, which became a 7-figure agency on the back of that. In addition, we put more money in his pocket, and he had a better time doing less. So it's like the model is everything, gang. And even if you're not the expert on the thing and you just want to learn about it, you can still use the mastermind model to make that happen. And you look like the hero because now you're the leader of the group. And even though you're not the expert, you put everything together and everybody knows your name, and they're more willing to do business with you and trust you and like you. And I still keep in touch with people we went on a trip with who are awesome. So I don't know how I got on this crazy tangent, but I think it's important to understand.
That was great. My next question was going to be like, can you share like some story that's impacted your journey kind of? And so that's it. So that's perfect.
Yeah. And this is why I teach what I teach, and why I do what I do, is because this model, if I had to throw everything else out and start over, masterminds would be the one thing I would keep. That's exactly how I would build my network again. It's exactly how I'd build businesses again. It's exactly how I would de-risk everything else I was doing, because I can make money while I learn. And, nowadays, I'm kind of moving towards the end of my journey of being a teacher and being a public figure and doing all that stuff. Like I have other journeys I want to go on in life. So I made a decision recently where I'm only going to work with 750 more clients. And that's not some fake scarcity and I'm going to change my mind later. No, it's like I've worked with a lot. I've had a lot of great results from, 6 figures to my best client is doing 8 figures and accumulated $3,000 in a real estate mastermind. So like I've been there, I've done that. I can teach it. I can help. We're in BAM 3.0 working on that. We got all these cool tools. We got all this stuff. And I got room for 750 clients in my life, and maybe they'll take a couple of years and then I'm done. And that's it. And I either hand it off to my team or I sell the company, whatever it is, but I walk away. I'm putting a period at the end of the sentence. So if this is like something that you've always wanted to do, I don't know anybody else who's teaching it at the level that I'm teaching it at and is as accessible as I am still. There's people out there that get this stuff and grok this stuff as well as I do, and they have that kind of experience. They've been a part of 50 plus masterminds, and they've started masterminds, and they've joined masterminds 100K plus a year, and they've written books on masterminds, but they're a very small number of people, and I happen to be one of them. So if that's on your roadmap and that's something you want to create to increase your income and impact in less time and help more people without filling your calendar full of calls, and focusing on high ticket versus, the memberships and the small chunks, and which is just as hard to sell and way less profitable, then I say reach out and check out my book. I got another one coming out soon. You can go to 8minutemastermind.com just to get a sense if you like my vibe. The new one is coming out soon. I'll let you know when that drops. 8minutemastermind.com, free plus shipping. You pay $6, we'll ship it anywhere in the world. If you don't love it, we'll refund your $6. So that's my offer for you.
Awesome. All right. Well, Brad, before we get going, I got one more question for you. And that is, on the show, I like to have every guest ask a question to the audience. So I don't recall what you asked last time, but I'd like you to think of something again. So if you could ask our audience anything, whether it's something you're curious about or just kind of want to get everybody thinking about, what would that be?
What if you had done one of the things we discussed today 5 years ago? Maybe not AI, it wasn't quite there yet, but like what if you had started a mastermind 5 years ago? And now you have a mastermind with 50, 75 people. They're paying 15, 25K a month, and you're doing legitimately $1 million a year. And you meet up with this mastermind 3 times a year. Maybe you go on vacation with them in the summers. They're some of your best friends. They're a family of choice. They're all connected to each other, getting crazy results. And you're just kind of there as the facilitator, and you're not necessarily having to be the expert guru. You bring in the speakers, you bring in the sponsors, you kind of have a little small team, maybe 1 or 2 people to help you manage that. But you have a legitimate 7-figure income stream that's 50+% profit. Well, you can't go back in time, but you can plant the tree today. And you plant the tree by getting started, right? You check out the book, you see if it's for you, if it's the right fit, you reach out to me, we work together, we make it happen. And 5 years from now, that could absolutely be a reality. Like Jen and Stacy, they came to my mastermind in 2019, 2020. They caught the bug I worked with them, helped them launch their mastermind, got them their first $150,000 in clients, referral wise, like just me directly referring to them because they had a really killer offer and they were doing something awesome in real estate, multifamily. And that's since grown to be an 8-figure mastermind on top of they've gotten 3,000 doors of real estate in multifamily. It's like they've built insane wealth. They've helped a lot of people and they're just getting started. So 5 years seems like a long time. It's really not. And it'll be here before you know it. It's like, what is the decision you're going to make today that's going to set you up for that?
Awesome. All right. Well, Brad, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian. And I'm grateful for everybody listening today. And I'll see you on the other side.